Hey everybody, welcome back to Letterman Row. It is the off season, the summer, and it does look like there's going to be football played, so you know what that means. Let's get diving into our positional breakdowns. They're brought to you by Buyers Auto, our good friends. If you're looking to buy an auto, choose Buyers Auto. That's Spencer Holbrook, that's Jeremy Birmingham, I'm Austin Ward. When you start any kind of breakdown, it always starts with the quarterbacks for me, and for Ohio State with Justin Fields back, I think they're going to be good. Maybe that's the end of the video.
Yeah, I mean, Ohio State's going to be good at quarterback, and we will see you next time on Letterman Row. But no, you're dealing with one of the top 2 or 3 returning quarterbacks in the country, a Heisman Trophy candidate, a Heisman Trophy finalist from a year ago, and a guy who a lot of people think is going to be the difference between Ohio State and everyone else in the country, as a lot of these early, preseason prognosticators are putting in their picks for the Buckeyes to be eventual national champions this year, and that firmly rests on the shoulders of Justin Fields, maybe even more so this year than a year ago, when we said that over and over, that the team would go as far as Justin Fields would go.
Yeah, it's certainly interesting. Spencer's been writing about this a little bit with, and we've mentioned it several times. This is a rare thing for Ryan Day to have a quarterback for a second season. He's never had it before, and now he gets to do it with one of the most talented guys that he's ever worked with in Justin Fields. What can year 2 look like for this guy, Spencer?
I just think the playbook is going to be so much more diverse, and I think he's going to have a little bit more of the keys. Ryan Day at the end of the season was allowing him to do a lot more things. I think the playbook was opened up immensely from the first game of the year to the last game of the year. I just think that's going to open up even more. I think Justin Fields is going to have almost 100% of the playbook. I remember a quote from Ryan Day that was, Dwayne Haskins had 80% of the playbook or whatever. I think Ryan Day can finally hand the playbook to Justin Fields and say, this is yours, the entire thing. I think the Buckeyes can use that. We already know what a masterful play caller he is, and if they have the entire repertoire to use, I think it's going to be dangerous.
I think what makes him more dangerous is if he's finally healthy again. I think nobody who watched, what happened after he came off the bench and in that tent in Ann Arbor, then what happened in the Big Ten championship game with that knee brace, and then against Clemson when he clearly was still not 100%. Part of the reason maybe that playbook was open to some different pages that you're talking about, Spencer, was that he had to really throw. He was not able to run the way you expect Justin Fields to be able to do. That was a short-term thing. It, by all indications, didn't require surgery. He was ready to go throughout in most of the winter conditioning. He was out there for the first 3 practices of spring before it was over. And you look at these pictures of him working out now with his private quarterback coach before coming back to Columbus, the dude looks like he's jacked out of his mind. Physical maturity and health, you give that to this guy who was able to absorb that playbook in really a fast time last year, much faster than I think people expected he'd be able to, despite the warnings of Tate Martell.
Yeah.
You add all that together, I mean, I can't imagine him not winning the Heisman right now.
I think the interesting thing, we could talk about how the playbook changed in the last 3.5 games of the year, because remember that injury happened at the end of the Penn State game. Yeah. We watched a year ago for the first 9 games that Ohio State didn't want him to run the football. I mean, it was never explicitly stated, but it was very clear in the offense that they didn't want Justin Fields running the ball. And when you have the first 2,000-yard rusher in school history and the 5th-ranked running back in the Big Ten behind him, why would he have to? Right? But now J.K. Dobbins is gone. We have no idea about the health of Master Teague. We have no idea about the effectiveness of Trey Sermon coming in from Oklahoma. We do know that Justin Fields is healthy. We do know that Ohio State is probably going to lean on his legs more this year. And when you're talking about opening up the whole playbook, that's what you're talking about. It's not even just like, okay, now the route tree maybe expands a little bit, but you're talking about a guy who's going to be told this year, when you take that 5th step and there's wide open spaces, go. And Justin Fields is an electric Braxton Miller type athlete, just because he looks a little different doing it and a little more, maybe more fluid, a little less herky-jerky. Like when he gets going, like that dude can flat out fly. And I think that's where you're going to see the real highlight tape stuff come up this year that we didn't see a year ago.
And I remember trying to put him in perspective early last season in the off season, and you'd watch him and you said, well, what's the comparison? Well, you take some of the arm strength of Cardale, but not all of it. Some of the accuracy of Dwayne Haskins, maybe not all of it. Some of the electrifying running ability of Braxton Miller, maybe not all of it. And then the leadership and toughness that you saw from J.T. Barrett throughout his career, well, it turns out he's got that too. He's got some of the best parts of every Ohio State quarterback who's won all these games over the years. And it sounds just like too much hyperbole. Like he really could be the greatest quarterback in Ohio State history. And Like, just to say that after 1 year and going into his second year, it sounds crazy just to put that sentence out there.
But look at the numbers, though. I mean, you're talking about a guy. It took J.T. Barrett 5 years to accumulate the numbers that he put together in that time. You could extrapolate Justin Fields out to 2.5 seasons to break all those records.
Yeah, I don't think that they're going to get that half.
They're not going to get that half. But the point is, the numbers back up what you're saying. Yeah. And I remember a year ago, there was a very, very intelligent, also handsome guy that works for an Ohio State website, Letterman Row. His name was Jeremy Birmingham, who mentioned repeatedly that Justin Fields was the best quarterback he'd ever seen in the high school arena. And at the time, he felt like maybe I should dial down this rhetoric. But no, I'm going to ramp that stuff way up because I turned out to be absolutely correct.
I predicted Justin Fields. I don't know the exact number, but if you go back on Letterman Row a couple weeks ago, I did some stat predictions for the entire season. When I was doing wide receiver projections, I would add a little bit to last year and make some realistic picks. You would do the tight ends, the running backs. I had to do some rushing yards for Justin Fields. And when I put it all together, I realized he's going to have 60 touchdowns. And Joe Burrow had 60 touchdowns last year. So if you actually think that he can improve even a little bit, he'll be at about 60 touchdowns. He'll be at about 4,000 passing yards, and he'll be near probably 900 rushing yards. He's going to have what I think is probably going to be the best season for a quarterback in Ohio State.
But that's assuming we get a 14 or 15 game season.
Right.
Exactly.
So
it's also assuming that those games stay close, because one of the biggest problems in Justin Fields' Heisman candidacy last year was that he had 5 games where he didn't play in the second half. And if he had got to play full games the way that Joe Burrow did, thanks to LSU's horrific defense, his numbers would have blown Joe Burrow out of the water. I think people fell in love a little bit with the Joe Burrow story, and I understand completely why, and I'm not saying he's not a deserving winner. He was. But the fact that Justin Fields was discounted as a potential winner of that award, I think, missed a lot of what he was doing.
Right, because Ohio State also had Chase Young and J.K. Dobbins there. But no, you're absolutely right. Spencer, you were...
When Justin Fields beats Miami 76-5, he beats Nebraska, however many to 7. You've got Rutgers on the schedule. You don't know how many second halves.
73-14 against Maryland.
You don't know how many second halves he's going to play. They play Bowling Green. They play Maryland and Rutgers. They play Buffalo. So you don't know how many second halves he's actually going to be able to play.
And they still play Don Brown's Michigan defense.
But it's also this year more important than ever for Ohio State to not have him play those second halves, because we know that he is going to be off to the NFL after this coming season, and we know that the people playing behind him have never played a snap of college football. Gunnar Hoak, I'm not counting him in that conversation, because those second halves of games that are blowouts, they have to be reserved for C.J. Stroud and Jack Miller. Mm-hmm. Have to be.
Yeah, that's a great point. If Justin Fields happens to go down or can't play, or second half, whatever, you turn and look to the future. I think if there was a game to be played over there this week, that Gunnar Hoak would be Ohio State's backup.
Agreed.
Now, I understand what you're saying. If you're getting fourth quarter reps, you want those to go to C.J. Stroud and Jack Miller, who, everyone was hurt by the shutdown, but those were early enrollee quarterbacks who got here for a reason in January to try and get rolling, because everyone assumes that there's going to be a new starting quarterback for Ohio State after this season. Which one of those guys will it be? We don't have to nail down any predictions right now, but I will say, and I've said before, that what C.J. Stroud did just on day one was one of the most impressive practice debuts for a freshman that I can remember. And I don't want to be a prisoner of the moment there, but these guys usually come out really struggling. Jack Miller did good things on day one as well. I think both of these guys have bright futures, but I was really impressed with Stroud. And again, this guy, Jeremy Birmingham, that he compared him to Dwayne Haskins, and I saw him moving around a little bit. And he's like a more mobile version of Dwayne Haskins. So I'm going to keep picking and choosing and try not to pat Berm on the back too much. But Spencer, you've written that, for these freshmen, that was a big deal. They didn't get to go through that.
But 3 practices allowed them to see what a day at practice is like. And so I think what you can take from that, it sucks. You lost 12 practices that you're not ever going to get back from your first spring at Ohio State. But you had winter workouts. You know all the early enrollees. You got to meet your 4 wide receivers that came in early with you. You've met all the coaches. You know the entire team now. You've had 3 practices. you know how the program operates, and I think that's huge, because if they were just June enrollees, we wouldn't be talking about this stuff. So the fact that they were even here for 3 practices gives them an advantage to say, hey, this is what I was taught in those 3 days. These are a couple drills that I can do. And then when I get on the phone or on the Zoom call or on the phone with Coach Dennis, he can tell me how to expand on those. So I think those 3 practices are bigger than we're giving credit for, but I also think it's a huge loss for them to have to miss those.
I think you learn in those 3 practices what it takes to be a leader at Ohio State, and you'll see who really bought into that when they return. I mean, those players are making their return in June. They're starting today. I mean, if giving a little clue of when we're doing this, but they're getting themselves back, and you're going to see who took that opportunity and went home and made the best of it.
Right.
And that is going to be the next sort of check mark on the box of who is the guy down the road. But there's no doubt that those 3 practices, those first 3 months of being here, are going to prove as a barometer for how those guys are going to handle the pressure of being at Ohio State for the next 3 or 4 or 5 years. So, I don't want to dismiss Gunnar Hoak and say we don't even need to. Gunnar Hoak may very well be important to Ohio State this year. Chris Chugunov certainly was a year ago, just the opportunity to get into the game in Ann Arbor and make a play and make a throw for a first down to Benjamin Victor. Like, there's a moment when that's going to be necessary this year out of Gunnar Hoak. But in football, you think about 2 things, really. You think about today and next year. Like, I don't think you can really think about the third quarter of a game against Illinois when maybe Justin Fields sprains his ankle.
Sure.
Like, you have to think about what happens down the road, and the next guy is Jack Miller, C.J. Stroud, or Kyle McCord, who we're not even going to bring up really on this show because he's not on the roster. So
it's almost, Berm, you have to also think about, it's not just the sprained ankle in the third quarter against Illinois. It's when you're on the road at Penn State, Justin Fields scrambles on a 2nd and 8, it's 3rd and 6, and he loses his helmet. And you've got a 3rd and 6, and you've got to have a backup quarterback to make a play. So there's just those times throughout the season where you know you have to have somebody you can count on. And Chris Chugunov last year was not Justin Fields, but on a 3rd and 6,
Are we sure?
On a 3rd and 6, when they needed a dig route from KJ Hill, Chris Chugunov found it and completed a pass, and he needed to throw the ball to Benjamin Victor. Those things are possible.
What a wildly specific scenario.
I'm just saying, at Michigan,
at Penn State, 2nd and 8 scramble for 3rd and 6.
What do you know, Spencer?
Well, I mean, this is really scaring me, like how deep he went into his numbers projection, because he knows.
What time in the third quarter is this happening?
I'm just saying, there are moments where Justin Fields is going to lose his helmet this year, and so it's not just injury that we need to worry about.
I hope I'm actually in the press box for that game and we get ahead to it. Yeah, I'm stopping you right there.
No, I'm saying it is going to that point, like that moment.
The 3rd and 6?
Justin Fields took a number of shots a year ago that most quarterbacks would not have gotten up from.
Right.
And it is very important for Ohio State, knowing that they're going to open up his aspect of the running game more than they did last year, to find ways to instill in him a self-preservation mode that is perhaps a touch stronger than it was a year ago. Because there were plays, Michigan State, Wisconsin, Penn State, he just was beaten up. And in each of those instances, it was diving into the end zone. So I guess you get what you. But one of them, he lost the ball against Penn State.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, then you had the other. He got hit again. I don't know. You just got to watch that guy.
That sounds like a good topic for running back week when we get to the positional breakdowns, brought to you by Byers Auto. Because I think that Justin Fields will not have to run nearly as much as people are expecting. But that's a whole nother episode. I'll still be talking about it with these guys, Spencer Holbrook and Jeremy Birmingham. I'm Austin Ward. We'll see you next time at Letterman Row.
Thanks for watching. Subscribe below to get the latest videos from Letterman Row.
We got Letterman Live, we've got the practice report, we got rapid reaction. Hey, and you know we got Buck IQ with Zach Bourne.
For sure. We got recruiting breakdowns with Berm. We got whatever you need. Ohio State football and Ohio State athletics, we've got you covered here at Letterman Row.